y'all, I'm Alicia, and today I'm going to be discussing my favorite fantasy TV shows of all time. The first show on my list is The Dragon Prince. It is on Netflix, there's 3 seasons out right now, but there's going to be more, and it's animated, and it is so good. I was hesitant to start it because it's animated, and I haven't really watched any animated things that weren't meant for, like, children, but this series is so amazing. The fantasy world is also so complex and wonderful, and there's shadow elves and sunfire elves and other types of elves, and there's dragons and humans that can do black magic, and it is just phenomenal. Like, it's my favorite fantasy show of all time. And if the fantasy elements aren't fantastic enough, the show also has such good representation, which honestly surprised me when I was first watching it. Like, I absolutely loved it. We have a deaf female army commander slash warrior who is the main character's aunt. And she's phenomenal. She has a translator or interpreter with her, and that's how she communicates with the people around her who don't understand sign language. And yeah, it was just awesome to see a deaf character who uses sign language in like an important role in a fantasy show, because I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't even know if it's been done before. So yeah, that was fun. That was fantastic. And then we also have a blended family, a mixed race family. The king is black. He has dreadlocks, and his son Ezrin, sorry, I almost said Callum. Ezrin is also black. He has an afro, and it's just part of the show, and it's fantastic to see that. We don't often see that. And we have Callum also, who's like the bastard son, right? Because he's not the king's biological son, but he's just as accepted and loved and part of the family. And I really liked for once that was how the royal family was. Like, it wasn't a huge deal that Callum isn't like a prince by blood, and I really, really liked that. And I think the show also had a really nice balance between being like fun and lighthearted and also exploring deep topics. And I really liked it. The second show on my list is The Vampire Diaries, and this show is very dramatic. It is not perfect, but I have watched it like several times. I absolutely love it. All of the characters are engaging, even the villains. Like, the show has the best villains. We have Catherine and Kai and Klaus, all of whom are super terrifying and deadly, but are just so funny and sassy and just such complex, good villains. Like, you can't help but also feel bad for them at the same time. And I love how familial relationships in this show were just as important as the romantic ones. Like, Stefan and Damon's relationship, I think, is like the central focus of this entire show. And I know Elena's technically the main character, and yeah, she's with both brothers, and those relationships are obviously really important to the show. I did really like how Stefan and Damon's relationship with each other never wavered because of Elena. Like, yeah, they got jealous and like didn't like each other at certain points, but like it never came between them. And I really like that about it. And I also really loved seeing Caroline and her mother. I liked seeing Elena find her new family with her friends, with, you know, Caroline and Bonnie, and she still had Jeremy after her parents died. And then, you know, I don't want to spoil, but like her aunt and her biological father and everyone else dies, and basically everyone in the show dies. But yeah, it was just so good. And I really like how the show kind of deals with death and grief and how to move on and build a new family after you've lost kind of everything. I really like how that it was explored in the show. And my last comment for The Vampire Diaries is that the soundtrack is phenomenal. Whoever did the soundtrack for the show deserves a raise, because that like made the show. I honestly like have spent hours on YouTube just searching for and listening to all of the songs used in that show. The next show on my list is Stranger Things. There's 3 seasons out right now. I have watched it multiple times. I'm so excited for season 4. I mean, that goes for all of the shows on this list. Like, I've watched them all several times because they're my favorite. But yeah, maybe this series doesn't belong on this list because it's more sci-fi than fantasy, but it's all speculative fiction, and it's staying on this list. It was so refreshing to get a show that's set in the 80s where all of the characters aren't like unrealistically, unbelievably hot and gorgeous and popular, and we actually have kids who are like the right age to act and who are actually really good actors. Like, everyone in the show does a really great job at the role, and the plot itself was really engaging and exciting and suspenseful, and I just literally, it's so bingeable. This show is so bingeable. I can sit there and watch the entire thing in like one day. The fourth show on my list is Teen Wolf. And I know what everyone's thinking is it's an MTV show, it's not even running anymore. Like, why is that your favorite? But Teen Wolf is so good. Like, I feel like a lot of people like mock it or won't watch it because it's like a kid's show or like MTV or whatever, but like it was so good. It's funny and cheesy, but it's also so like dark and like deep at the same time. It doesn't take itself seriously, but then when it pulls those emotional punches, like it makes you cry. Like it can be so emotional. Like I can't even explain how much I love this show. It explores a lot of darker topics that you wouldn't expect a show like this to touch on. Like, I don't know, it was so good. I loved all of the characters, especially Styles. He's my favorite. I think he's a lot of people's favorite. And I mean, he's obviously like the comedic relief character, and I absolutely loved him. And yeah, the show is also extremely bingeable. The fifth show on my list is The Witcher. There is only one season out on Netflix right now, and I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard of it if you're even searching for this video. But I am obsessed. Like, I've watched it 5 times in a row. I am starting the book series really soon. My sister currently has the books, so I can't start it, but as soon as she gives them back, I am planning on starting it. The fight scenes and the action scenes are choreographed so freaking well and filmed well, and it's filmed so smoothly, and I really enjoyed watching them. I also think the actors did a really great job. Like, especially Henry Cavill did a really good job as Geralt, because he does a really good job at like kind of pulling those facial expressions where like Geralt's not supposed to show emotion, or everyone thinks he doesn't feel emotion, but he actually does. And I think Cavill did a really good job of kind of showing that with his facial expressions, as well as Yennefer, the person who plays Yennefer. I think it's Anya Chalotra. I don't know how to pronounce it, but she also did such a good job. When Yennefer is in her room at in Aretuza and she punches the mirror and she's sobbing, her acting was phenomenal. Like, she deserves an award for that. The only thing I didn't like about season 1 of The Witcher was that series' storyline really had no arc and like no purpose. Like, it didn't have like, I don't know, it wasn't a plot driven narrative. Overall, it's fantastic. If you are into kind of darker, definitely adult fantasy, I highly recommend this. The sixth show on my list is Outlander. And this show, again, is not strictly fantasy. It's more historical romance, or historical fiction. But I see on a lot of other people's lists that it is classified as fantasy. So I wanted to add it in here because it is one of my like favorite shows. It is so well done. I think the acting is fantastic, and the scenery is gorgeous, and like the costumes and the set design and everything about it, the script is so well done. For those of you who don't know, it takes place in Scotland in the 1700s, and yeah, it's done really well. It does start off a bit slow, so you might have to give it a few episodes to get into it, but after that, like, I was hooked. I binged it super fast, and I watched it multiple times. And the show also is adult, so if you're not comfortable with like sex scenes or graphic violence or anything like that, I don't recommend watching this, but for everyone else, it's fantastic. The relationship between Jamie and Claire is one of the healthiest romantic relationships and marriages that I've seen on TV, to be honest. You can tell they really love each other. It's not like toxic in any way, and yeah, I just really enjoyed that aspect of it. And the seventh and last series on my list is The 100. It is also on Netflix. I believe there's 7 seasons out right now. I have personally only watched the first 5. I have not caught up, but I started it a lot of years ago, only when there was 2 seasons out, I believe, is when I first started it. So yeah, it's been a while, but I remember really, really loving it. It's also sci-fi. I wouldn't classify it strictly as fantasy, but I think it's really cool because we get to see these people in like life or death situations where they're in survival mode, and it kind of brings out the best and worst of people. And I think we don't get to see characters in that situation, at least so many of them at once, throughout the entire show. Like, it's so interesting because that's the only mode we get to see the characters in. We don't really get to see them before, or like what they would be in an ideal world, like we do with a lot of other characters. But yeah, it was super interesting to see what that would be like in this like post-apocalyptic era, and it's fantastic. It is very action-packed, and something I love about the show is that it's not afraid to kill off characters. I know in a lot of like fantasy shows, a lot of characters get brought back to life, and this is an issue I've heard in Supernatural, and it's also an issue in the Vampire Diaries. Not an issue because like I personally didn't mind it, but I know a lot of people were upset that so many main characters die over and over again, and yet they're brought back repeatedly. So it's almost as if the death is meaningless. But I think personally it works in some series, and in others it just doesn't. But in this series, because like it is like these really high stakes, high action, life and death situations, I really like that the writers aren't scared to like kill off loved characters, even though it makes you angry in the moment and sad. But yeah, I'm really happy that this is a show that isn't scared to do that like a lot of other shows. So that was it for my list. And if any of you are wondering why Game of Thrones isn't on this list, it's because I have not watched it yet, and it is quite the commitment. I am waiting for the right time to start it. Maybe this summer, I don't know, but yeah, I have not gotten to that yet. Who knows if it'll make this list? I've heard great things from other people. That is it for today. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and I will see you next time with another video. Thanks, guys. Bye.